Okay, we're going to get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to a special Board of Supervisors meeting for the purpose of adopting the 2022 budget, and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Supervisor Allen is excused. Supervisor Barrett? Connolly? Gaston? Here. Grasso?
Here.
Kanowski is excused. Kuzniers?
Here.
Lant?
Here.
Lawler?
Here.
Lucia?
Here.
O'Connor?
Here.
Peck?
Here.
Hemrick?
Here.
Raymond?
Here.
Richardson? Shaw? Smith?
Here.
Tollison? Veach?
Here.
Winnie?
Here.
Wood?
Here.
Wright? Zlotnick? Quorum present.
Thank you. And if everyone would please rise for attention to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
America.
and to the republic
The
for
republic
which it
which
stands,
stands
one nation, under God,
under God,
indivisible, with
indivisible,
liberty,
liberty, justice for all.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to ratify this special meeting. Supervisor Tollison, seconded by Supervisor Barrett. Roll call.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Connolly?
Yes.
Gaston?
Yes.
Grasso?
Yes.
Kuzniers? Lant?
Yes.
Lawler?
Yes.
Lucia?
Yes.
O'Connor?
Yes.
Peck?
Yes.
Hemrick?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Shaw? Smith?
Yes.
Tollison? Veach?
Yes.
Winnie?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Wright? Zlotnick?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd ask the clerk to please begin reading of the resolutions 313 through 319.
Resolution 313, introduced by Law and Finance, amending the tentative 2022 budget. Resolution 314, introduced by Law and Finance, adopting the 2022 Saratoga County Capital Plan. Resolution 315, introduced by Law and Finance, authorizing 2022 agreements with various agencies. Resolution 316, introduced by Law and Finance, adopting the 2022 Saratoga County Compensation Schedule. Resolution 317, introduced by Law and Finance, setting 2022 salaries for certain temporary and part-time employees to include a 2% cost of living increase. Resolution 318, introduced by Law and Finance, setting 2022 salaries for certain county employees to include a 2% cost of living increase. Resolution 319, introduced by Law and Finance, introducing a proposed local law identified as Introductory Number 7, Print Number 1 of 2021, relative to amending the 2022 compensation schedule for certain county officials and setting a date for a public hearing thereon.
Thank you. And at this time, I entertain a motion to remove resolutions 310 and 311 from the table. Motion by Supervisor Tollison. Second by Supervisor Shaw. And at this time, I'll entertain a request. Oh, I'm sorry, roll call vote.
Supervisor Barrett? Connolly?
Yes.
Gaston?
Yes.
Grasso?
Yes.
Kuzniers? Lant?
Yes.
Lawler?
Yes.
Lucia?
Yes.
O'Connor?
Yes.
Peck?
Yes.
Hemrick?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Shaw? Smith?
Yes.
Tollison? Veach?
Yes.
Winnie?
Yes.
Supervisor Winnie?
Yes.
Thank you. Wood?
Yes.
Wright? Zlotnick? Motion passes.
Thank you. And are there any requests for separate votes on the resolutions? Supervisor Peck.
Yeah, I'd like to request a separate vote on 313 and then 310, please.
Request for separate votes on resolutions 313 and 310. Any other requests for separate votes? All right, at this time, would someone like to move resolution 313 for discussion? Moved by Supervisor Barrett. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Supervisor Shaw. Under discussion. Supervisor Peck.
Yeah, I'll just touch on quickly and then I'll have further discussion on the full budget, but the amendment here to the budget, the two things I got serious concerns about are the bonding of the $11.5 million and the various items that would normally be part of the regular budget. And I think when you'll hear me during the next resolution dealing with the budget, when you have so many one-time cash infusions into the budget to balance it, pay raises for the Board of Supervisors, I am not in support of. So I would make an amend, I would move to amend and remove the 13,127 increase, which was a pay increase for the chair, the vice chair, and the entire board. You'll have a better understanding of my reasoning if you want to know. But in general, when we got infusions into the budget to balance, I think that's not good optics.
Is there a second on the motion to amend?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Supervisor Zlotnick. Roll call vote on.
Is there just discussion on the amendment? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yep.
Are you willing to entertain
Yes.
discussion? I confess a little bit of ignorance, I guess. I'm not, can somebody just very lightly touch on the Supervisor Peck mentioned bonding for what should be recurring, which should be operating expenses. So just, could someone please refresh my memory on what the bond proceeds are going to be used for?
County Administrator Steve Bolter to answer.
Sure. This was approved
Thank
by the Long Range Capital Committee, and it's about 11.4 million. It's a variety of projects, both facilities, upgrades, and equipment. All of the bonded components will have to be approved by our bond counsel to make sure they meet all the requirements for that. We're working closely with the treasurer's office. So these items we identified as having at least a 5-year or longer life. And so that's why they were included in the long-range capital plan.
Okay. So the PPU for the useful life to match the bond schedule, those two things tie out, and the treasurer has looked at that. I don't know if Drew's here, but I assume he's looked at that and blessed it, as it were.
Yes, he's reviewed it. We've also reviewed it with an initial review with the bond counsel as well.
And Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, could I ask Supervisor Peck a question?
Yes.
Thank you. Bill, what projects are you referring to as inappropriate for a bond?
They can be bonded. We haven't bonded these types of things in the past. Usually they're in the capital budget. So in fact, in the capital plan, in our budget, is equipment for like DPW.
Yeah.
Somebody tell me 3, 4 million, 2.5, what's the number? No, that's a normal course of business. This is $11.4 million. We could run down through a whole list of equipment that's listed. It was handed out at some point in the last couple of months. But whether it be bucket trucks, it's, some things in buildings, when you're doing large construction, you want to bond those things out. In Saratoga County, when we've had the fortitude to purchase dump trucks, there's plow trucks on here. There's payloaders. Those are things that we've done normally in the county budget under our normal DPW spending. When we put an infusion of this many items in 1 year, this is a $11.4 million cash infusion. We're going to get all these items. We're going to see years down the road. What I'm really concerned about, this whole budget thing will work for 2022. But I'm worried about 2023, some of these expenditures will be delayed, so we'll carry in. We'll be able to get through 2023. I'm really worried when I look at this budget, years 3 through 10, what Saratoga County is going to have to respond to. So when we start looking at wearing out of equipment, that's in the normal year, we would spend $3-4 million in our budget. Now we're going to spend the normal 3 or 4, and we're going to add, I'd have to add those DPW, and I'm not here to critique the DPW, but I think it was in good spirit that Supervisor Shaw had asked departments at the beginning of the year to say, what's your wish list? But then to actually take the wish list and just try to fund it all, I don't think is good governing.
So just one quick question, sir, for either the chairman or the county administrator. So we're basically buying some equipment. That's a lot of it, right? Is for equipment.
Well, there's other
But-
things that you should mention.
But is it safe to assume that the equipment needs of the DP, I know we can't look, completely accurately at the future, but is it safe to say that we wouldn't see this type of thing recurring where we were bonding for equipment next year and the year after? I think if we need the equipment and this makes sense to get it, I don't have a real problem with it, and I don't even have a real problem bonding it as long as it's tied out to the PPU, the useful life, and the bond maturity schedule matches the life of the equipment. But I think to Bill's point, it's not something that should be, seen every year where we're spending that kind of money on equipment and taking out new bonds. Is it reasonable to assume that that's not going to happen?
Moving forward.
Yeah, I know you can't look with absolute accuracy, Mr. Chairman. I know that, but have we caught up? It sounds like there's we needed a lot of stuff. We decided to go get it.
Right.
And that we're caught up now, and that this isn't something that we should look at this kind of bonding for equipment to the best of your knowledge, obviously, knowing that you can't. You don't have
Yes.
your crystal ball with you.
So Supervisor, as you know, as CEO of your town and our other colleagues here, you have to balance the needs of the residents of the county, in this particular case, or your township. And if you look at the adopted budget expenses moving forward, look historically going back, say to 2018, if you take out the one-shots in this budget, our adopted budget increase is actually less than it has been since 2018. And we believe at this time it's the appropriate thing to do to meet the needs, not only of the department, but the residents of the county.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that our DPW department needed a lot of equipment. Maybe it had not gotten some funding that it needed in the past. We're doing this in a way to bring the DPW into a situation equipment-wise where they can meet the needs of the residents of the county. I'm just hopeful that we're there now and that we're not going to be going back to this to buy more equipment. In other words, the long-range capital, by definition, means we should have a long-range view of it. So we should have some idea looking out over the next 1 to 5 years saying, okay, we're replacing this equipment today. And we think we're going to need to replace this equipment next year and so on and so on. I'm assuming that I know that plan exists. So I'm just assuming that plan reflects a declining need of additional equipment based on the amount of stuff we're getting this year. That makes sense?
Could I just touch on a couple of things he said, Susan?
Well, I think you're looking for a response, Supervisor.
And then I'm done,
And
Bill.
I
Then
think
you-
I had the response for you
Okay.
as well.
Well, did you want to give me a response, Steve?
Yeah, I would say, yes, when we sat down with Chad and DPW, we asked them to prioritize what are some of the equipment that you're going to need that you not necessarily would get in any one year, but that's going to have a longer life, like some of the bucket trucks, things like that, that will really be a benefit that you can start using now and extend over the life of that piece of equipment. That's part of it. Another important component of what's getting bonded is there's $1.5 million for the Zim Smith Trail. That is seed money that will be used by the planning department for design purposes that they expect will be able to generate a significant multiple of that in additional grant funding to complete the next phase of the Zim Smith Trail. So that's one example of something else that's in here, and it's a significant expense. But because that's a long-term, really a long-term benefit to the county, that's spread out. There's some of the airport construction items are also included in that 11.4. There's a $2.4 million renovation of the county clerk's office and the vault, which is way overdue. And we anticipate that there could be, to your point about the future, we'll see what the board wants to do, but we have to start doing, in my opinion, and I think a number of the board's opinion, more investment in our facilities that we have to just make them more effective and appropriate for serving our constituents. So a lot of this is going towards that as well.
Thanks. That answers my question.
Thank you. Thank you. Supervisor Barrett, followed by Supervisor Shop, and then Supervisor Peck. I think you still have Supervisor Peck.
Well, there's no doubt that we need to expend money to invest in our facilities. There's certainly some very glaring needs in that regard, and I know Supervisor Beach is very much on top of that issue as well. But as far as the DPW expenses, this wasn't a situation where there was bonding done to replace what the normal funding of equipment and needs of the department would be this year. It's basically moving up purchases that are identified needs of the department. So it's basically, we're still spending within the budget a large amount of money for the needs of the department, and then speeding up some needs that may not have occurred until maybe year 3, 4, 5 of a 5-year plan, or maybe even further down the road. Move those expenditures up, get the equipment now. So yes, I think to answer your question or one of your concerns is once you buy this equipment, you won't need to buy it next year in a lot of cases. So that I think I just wanted to make that distinction as far as the funding is concerned.
That does answer the question. Thank you.
Supervisor Shop.
And I think Mr. Balger explained it very well, but I would say too that, to Bill's point about the wish list, I mean, there was a much longer list of equipment that came out of DPW and from a lot of the departments that was evaluated. Really, we took those larger items with the longer term use life and put them into the bonding plan. Some of those other items, were deferred. They may be considered in other budgets going forward, but we did what we could do, the best we could do with what we had to get those equipment into place. So.
Supervisor Peck.
Yeah, so Supervisor Lawler, just getting back, came out of their long-range capital plan. So they have their long-range capital plan, I think it was 14 million, maybe an additional 12 to be bonded for 26 million total. Is that accurate? So this is all tied to the long-range capital plan. I think that we've been in a position in the past, when you buy the equipment tomorrow, now this equipment might be a year out. That's why I say some of these items are backed up. We want to buy a truck in our town, we're a year out. So some of these expenditures won't be until next year. But I want to be clear with Jack that it's not just DPW added new equipment there. There's other things. There's building renovations. There's airport hangars. So there's a variety of things. And I'm just not comfortable in today's, where we're at in this juncture in the pandemic. Yes, we're coming out. Yes, we're doing a lot better. But we aren't out yet. To then go and all of a sudden borrowing this money because what's going to happen with that truck we buy next year is, that means it's 1 year sooner down the road that that's worn out. You know, at the end of the shelf life of 5, 7, 8 years. But that's my point on bonding.
Supervisor.
Well, every piece of equipment or vehicle has a shelf life. So yeah, the earlier you buy it, so you can safely assume the sooner it's going to go to the wayside. But if you need it and you're using it and it's an important part of your daily activities to get the job done to serve the residents, I don't see any problem with that whatsoever. Again, these were identified needs that are being financed in this fashion. So to label it a one shot or anything that I don't see it. You know, if you have needs, you have various options in how they can be financed and purchased. You know, the economy is starting to slow. We're going into in 2022, a period of higher interest rates that'll probably extend it to 2023. So if there is a time to bond items, it would be sooner than later, in my estimation. But to say that, well, we shouldn't buy something now because, you know, we should wait 3 years to buy something as opposed to buying it now, because that way we'll have it 3 years later or 3 years longer. That doesn't make any sense.
Supervisor Peck.
Yeah, that only depends on the urgency. On the urgency, if the need is there today, if the urgency of the need is so great, I'm not sure I've been explained that all this, the urgency was there.
Well, I think the fact that these identified needs are being moved up displays an urgency, because it is a little out of the ordinary compared to what we've done in the past. But again, we still have a significant amount of money in the budget that's not being replaced by bonding, so it's on top of what we're already spending. But if you get behind over the years, you got to catch up at some point. I think that's what we're doing here in a sound way. The finances of the county are very good. Chairman Kuzniers and Administrator Bulger have spoken about that in length at other meetings. Like I said, interest rates are going to be rising over the next year or two. Now would be the time. Now would be the time to move up some of those identified needs.
Any other discussions on the amendment? Supervisor Peck, would you please state the amendment to Resolution 313?
So the amendment I have is to remove under the Board of Supervisors, the change of 13,127 that was put in under the general amendment. I'm leaving the bonding aside. I just want to mention that. The amendment was to remove the 13,127, which was pay increases for the board, chair, and the vice chair, which I just don't think are appropriate at this time.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Law.
just a point of information, not debate or comment, but as I'm looking at 313, if you look at unclassified revenue, it says from 12,290,530 to $23,885.88. Then it says change is $120,000.
Yes, Deputy Administrator Ridge will answer that for you.
Thanks, Supervisor. So if you look at the two unclassified revenue lines on the resolution, if you total the 11,400,000 with the 120,000, that's the total difference between the two items. We split them up so you could see that one's for the Fire Training Center water line and the second one is the bond proceeds.
That makes sense. Thanks. I thought there was a typo there with the math. That's all. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Supervisor Barrett.
This is a vote on the amendment, right?
This is on the amendment
Yeah,
to,
no.
Connolly.
No.
Gaston.
Yes.
Grasso.
No.
Kuzniers.
No.
Lamb,
No.
Lawler,
Yes.
Lucia,
Yes.
O'Connor,
No.
Peck,
Yes.
Pemrick,
Yes.
Supervisor Pemrick.
Yes.
Thank you. Raymond,
Yeah. No.
Shaw,
No.
Smith,
Yes.
Collison, Beach,
No.
Winnie,
No.
Wood, Supervisor Wood,
Supervisor Wood, you're showing that you are muted right now. Could you hit *6 so we can hear you?
Wright,
Yes.
Zlotnick. Motion fails.
And would someone like to move Resolution 310 for discussion? I'm sorry, 313. Thought we had to vote on them all together. So I'm looking for a motion to move Resolution 310 for discussion. Supervisor Schaaf, is there a second? Second by Supervisor Tolleson. Discussion on Resolution 310. Supervisor Peck.
So I know Administrator Bulger, I appreciate just handing something out that with his comparisons of year to year. Just before the meeting, I appreciate that, and I'll review it after. But I look back at 2020, the actual budgeted or actual spent amount was 318 million. That's COVID year. The departments all did a super job. We said we were going into COVID. It hit. Everybody pulled back and did what they needed to do, and they did an outstanding job. They held back. 2021, we budgeted 340 million. Now, I know in your documents you mentioned earlier, and we talked about it during the workshop, that you're using a amended budget of 371 or 2 million. Those were a lot of expenditures, which I would like at the end of the year would be good to have, increased personnel, additional throughout the year, or project costs that we did on top of the budget that were outside. So those are amendments that we did at board meetings to add. So we went from 340 to an active budget of 371. 2022, we're at 381 million. My real issues with it is, I think it's balanced with infusions of cash, 9 million out of fund balance, 12 million of the cash infusion from the bond, or it's 11.4. You got 5 million in ARTA funding that I think is designated for lost revenue in 2022. So those are one-shot revenue sources going. Now, we talked about the machinery may not have to go in every year, but we usually keep up with your needed machinery every year. Now, there's 141, we budgeted 128 for sales tax revenue last year. Luckily, it was conservative, but it was a huge point of contention. I remember during the budget workshop, if you look back to last year, we came in at 145, so 17 million over. We were fortunate as a county. But part of that is, and I think my comments were at the board meeting, at the workshop last year, we had vaccines coming. People were tired of being cooped up. They'd be looking to get out and spend. And I think we saw some of that. But what I couldn't expect, what I didn't know was going to happen, was the federal government was going to start printing money and handing out money, or boosting up unemployment benefits, then extending it. So there was a lot of cash that came into people's hands to help to drive up sales tax revenue. So I'm just giving a warning out there that we need to be very careful. We need to be very careful, because unless, I think as Supervisor Barrett said, I think we're coming into a slowdown period again. So we need to watch it. If we don't have those cash infusions, that means less money for people to spend. The other place we get a lot of sales tax money, which is a detriment to our residents, is gas tax. So if gasoline prices are high, we get a lot of money in our coffers. Me personally, I don't like high gas prices, so hopefully that'll come down. Often I look at historical comments for individuals that they make to view what their future actions might be. Sometimes, like today, I see a complete 180. And I become baffled. If anybody wants a piece of entertainment, they should go back to the 2020 tentative budget workshop on November 16th. The discussion that day revolved around 12 positions and about $1 million in fund balance. What we have for one of these later items that's part of this budget is, I think from the budget message, is 45 part-time or full-time employees to be added. In there, in the 8 pages of changes, there's 55. Now you can catch me if I'm off by 1 or something, but I counted 55 salary increases. Now within the last 5 years, it might be 3-4 years ago, we did a rematrix of the grades and steps, and that's sort of what gives the county continuity. So we know what people have, where they're going, and what the costs are. We got 55 salary increases. I'm not saying we don't have people that aren't worth it. We have tremendous people that work here. But it seems like this was an interesting time to all of a sudden put 55 salary increases in. That doesn't count the 23 board members. There's also the folks for driving transport and veterans drivers, small increases, they need it. New positions, amending and retitling or reclassifying, they usually come with increases. So when I look at that in a time that we're still in uncertainty, I'd say we can get through it. Oh, maybe I'm running out, but we can get through in 2022. In 2023, some of these things will carry, but I'm worried about years 3 through 10. Can I have a couple more minutes?
Yeah, I'll give you another minute, but there's other members of the board, I'm
Yep.
sure, that would like to speak.
So we're at 223 per thousand. I think that's what we were at last year. I think the budget message, we were down slightly, might be 100%. I got property in 3 towns, Moreau, Northumberland, town of Saratoga. What's going to happen? Everybody that has a house that's sold in their town, they know prices were up. So one of 2 things goes on. Either your assessment goes up in your town, or if you don't reassess, your equalization rate goes down. When we equalize back to 100%, if I'm at the same rate I was a year ago, I was at 91% in Northumberland, I'm going to be at 83%. So that's going to, in every household that happens, there's going to be an increase in taxes. I just think we squandered a year where we could make sure we had money in people's pockets because we're spending it here. So that's on assessment. I think there's a lot of good things in the budget. I just think that there's too much of everything. And there's an old adage that pigs get fat, but hogs get slaughtered. And I think this budget, we're acting a little bit like hogs up at the government trough. And that's my concern. I think there's a lot of good things. I just think we tried to do too much and all of it in 1 year, and we're still in uncertainty. So that's my point.
Supervisor Barron.
Yes. Well, if you move up purchasing needs that are identified in the capital plan, it doesn't sound like there's much in the way of argument as far as what was identified in the capital plan. If you move up those purchases, you do need a revenue source to cover those purchases. So yes, so there is a revenue source, a revenue line that would be applied to those purchases, one-time purchases. And every vehicle or piece of equipment has a shelf life. The ARPA expenses, which I think again are very good investments, that in and of itself is a one-time spending. That's what ARPA funding is. I don't believe we're going to get ARPA funding again next year. Well, we will get it next year, but after we get our second half next year, I don't expect there to be an ARPA program past 2022. Maybe you know differently. So if you're allocating ARPA funding toward a purchase, that in and of itself you could call a one-time spending, one-time expense. So the fact that that's in the budget is not something that's going to be reoccurring or a long-term trend. It's a one-time allocation of funding from ARPA funding, which is a 2-year program, and you have up to 4 years to spend the money. Facility upgrades. Well, I don't hear anybody saying any of these facility upgrades are a bad idea. Again, that in and of itself is one-time spending. We're not going to renovate the clerk's area or any of these other investments every year. You do it. It's a one-time project. Probably have to do it again or should do it again in another 30, 40 years or something, who knows, but it's a one-time expense. So, and again, you need a revenue line or a revenue source to cover that expense in the budget. So yes, it is a one-time expense. And of course, any organization, private or public, must adjust their spending, their budget, their priorities and outlooks based on the current conditions. And right now, the conditions are conducive for the county to make up for shortages and needs of equipment and vehicles, to invest in facilities, investments that should have been done long ago. Now is the time to do it. So it's a perfect time. You're saying we're taking money out of people's pockets. We're utilizing funding that the county has and can acquire very easily to cover these very important expenses that are one time. I mean, you're talking about worried about, years down the road. Where is the reoccurring operational expenses that are being created here? Creating a whole bunch of new positions, as you talked about last year. You talked about, if you want some entertainment, go back and look at it. You want to talk about creating reoccurring expenses exponentially over the course of 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because the safest job in any government budget is a government job. Or I should say, the safest thing to be is in a government job. Once a government job's created, it very, very rarely goes away. So you want to talk about creating reoccurring expenses that are exponential and multiply on themselves over 5, 10, 20, 50 years, create a bunch of new positions. So, but I don't see where the reoccurring expense, budget expenses that we should be concerned about that are being created through this budget. We've been talking about capital purchases and investment in facilities. I think some of that will save a lot of money as opposed to costing more money operational. So I think what you should do is tell us the exact things, items, vehicles, equipment, upgrades that we shouldn't do. Let's go through the list.
Supervisor Peck.
I'll just make 2 points. You made my point for me. I appreciate that. If you want the reoccurring expenses are the 45 full and part-time. Some of them we need. Public health, environmental services, you got to fill that out. You added 45 positions. So that's the point I'm making. You did 55 salary increases. Those are recurring costs that each year exponentially go up, not only in fringe benefits, retirement. So that's really the recurring. I didn't want to, now if you go through line by line item I would have loved to. I asked for that information from every department request that they wanted to put in. I asked for in early August. I asked again in early September because I wanted to see what the departments wanted. I've been doing this a long time. I wanted to see where we were at. I wanted to see what the department requests were. I was denied. The administrator told me it wasn't authorized by Chairman Kuznier or Chair of Law and Finance Shaw, and I got the budget, in the final version the same time the press did. So I couldn't evaluate what the real needs were.
So the department heads wouldn't talk to you?
No, I didn't go to each
Oh, all
department
right.
head. Each department submits
Well,
their
I would ask
request.
the department head.
Each submits a request to the administrator. He had probably a whole file that could have been digitally sent to me or I could have picked up. That's all I was seeking. Then I could have analyzed department by department.
If I may, since I was characterized in this conversation, this budget process was the most transparent, most involved by our county employees. Department heads had a seat at the table. Unheard of. And to your comment that documents weren't available to you, all documents were available October 15th by the county administrator to the Board of Supervisors. So to say you didn't have or indicate or intimate enough time to review it, a lot of time has transpired since October 15th. And I would like to, the county administrator to respond to that characterization.
Well, the process was set up by the Board of Supervisors, a new process this year that the board unanimously approved for the budget process involving supervisors in our budget meetings with the individual department heads in August and early September. We also invited members of the Law and Finance Committee and Standing Committee department heads were involved in that. The reason, Supervisor, you did not get that information is you were not in that policy the way it was set up. All of the information was released on October 15th, including the department budget request that was published, on the web for the first time. Normally, what I've been told in the past, that was not put out publicly. It was not sent out to the supervisors as well. Also, the entire personnel requests were included from the beginning in the budget process. Again, that's a change from what I was told, because it used to be a small 3-person subcommittee of the HR committee would be making all those decisions and then report it to HR and then Law and Finance. Under the board's new policy, they wanted that information out front a lot quicker. So since October 15th, it's all been out there. So I think, this is a credit to the board for the policy changes that you have implemented to make this a more transparent process and give the supervisors the time to go through the budget and analyze in an appropriate manner.
And if I may follow up on the previous comments by Supervisor Peck and number of employees that have been added for the proposed 2022 budget. Saratoga County is one of the most efficiently run counties in New York State of similar size to ours. As a matter of fact, the number of residents served per employee is 192. If you look at other counties similar in size to ours, the next closest county, Dutchess County, serves 159. Albany County, 139. Oneida County, 104. Broome County, 110. Schenectady County, 102. Rensselaer County, 101. Our employees, I have said this over and over since I took over as chairman, are the greatest asset that we have here in Saratoga County, number one. Number two, adding employees, you failed to point out that we have mandates. Sheriff's Department has mandates. The District Attorney's Office has mandates. We are required to expand the number of employees in those departments by state law. And we are doing that. We're not going to break the law. And so that's a mischaracterization to make it sound like we're out here writing blank checks just to give everybody a job. That's not the case.
So I might, Mr. Chairman, just looking at some of these expenses, you've got
Supervisor, you have 30 seconds left for debate on this resolution.
2.5 for the vault rehab, 92,000 for IT, 2.5 million for the body cams, sheriff radios, and I know there's positions involved with that with 2 departments. We also have the expansion of the Department of Health. We've got 3 million for public health alone. So 120,000 for a water line for the fire training facility. So we've got a number of these expenses that all relate to very important initiatives that we need to do.
Supervisor Gaston.
Thank you. With regards to the positions, it would be helpful after I ask my next question to note which of the positions are being added as a result of mandates and which are not. That might be helpful just for clarification. Because I assume it's not all of them. I have no problem with the number of positions that are being added. I don't frankly see how many personnel we have per resident as a sign of how well we're doing as a county. I think the actual service that we perform is a better indicator. So I'm totally fine with that number coming down some. However, to that end, the purpose of a county, purpose of government, in my opinion, is to help ensure the health and safety of their community. We have been doing well financially. We are spending a lot of money, vast majority of which I have no issue with in this budget. But I am going to move to amend again to increase the amount for nonprofits from 2 million to 5 million. I don't know where it will go, but I know that there are a lot of nonprofits that may not make it through 2022 that are providing services. They're working with our public health department to get out vaccines. They're working with our social services department to make sure that people have food. They are making sure that individuals have mental health care, especially as we deal with an increased opioid crisis. They are providing support and working with the county employees that we do have. And some of them, as a result of COVID, may not exist at the end of 2022 for any additional outlay of funds. I'm not suggesting that it go to any particular one. I believe the idea of a more competitive process or a merit-based process is perfectly fine with me. But I would move to increase that amount from 2 million to 5 million in the year 2022. Thank you.
Is there a second on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second the amendment.
Seconded by Supervisor Lawler. We're on discussion now.
For discussion.
Supervisor Lawler.
I'm sorry, for discussion purposes. One of the things that became clear to me, and I got involved in it when we first started shutting down because of COVID, and the not-for-profits were scrambling for things like face masks and thermometers, and I got involved in that, trying to help some of the not-for-profits, and this board at that time, I know Carl Zielman did a great job of including those organizations in the distribution of personal protection equipment, and they are suffering, but I don't know that just lopping $3 million is necessarily the most efficient way to do this. Perhaps we could agree to revisit the issue of nonprofits to have a more thorough process here of who needs money and why, and then do that separately outside of this budget process. I think they are deserving. I think we have to be open to their request. I learned so much. The not-for-profits, they work so well. In fact, there's a weekly, well, I think it's monthly call among not-for-profits and our social services, our veterans, all the people who help support the not-for-profits in their mission. And I think we would be worthy of, they are worthy of our giving them an opportunity to make their case. But I don't know that just throwing, and I know you mean, I say throwing, that's not exactly what I mean. Adding $3 million to the budget, I don't have a sense of what they need. I don't have a sense of who needs it. So it would be difficult, Supervisor Gaston, to support your amendment because there's so many unknowns. And so that's my concern with it.
I understand. In response, I would just say we do have a nonprofit process where nonprofits can apply for funding. And historically,
If I may, I just want to remind the body that any amendments to the budget are required by law to be budget neutral at this time. So as part of your resolution, where are you suggesting the money come from?
from the ARPA funding that's currently being used to fill a hole that I don't understand how it exists.
Which line item in the budget?
What line item is the 2 million for the nonprofits coming from as it is?
We can get that for you.
Can I just give some insight?
Supervisor, your time, I believe.
Sorry, I really,
Oh, this is on, okay, this is on the amendment. You
I
do have
just,
time.
just
But-
so Ridge, when he's looking, go ahead.
All right, so just for order, we have Supervisor Beach and Shop that had their lights on prior to you.
Okay,
So,
Well-
so going back. Supervisor Guest, I know. You had a question on the,
do you have,
It's on the unclassified revenue amount line. I'm just getting that for you out of the A fund. So I'll have that for you in just a second.
and is that where the remainder of the ARPA funds are coming from?
It is.
Okay, so my request would be from that, although I would also note that historically, a supervisor has been able to request a change in funding and never had to provide the line item number. But, okay. So my request would be that it come from the same place as the 2 million that's currently there for the nonprofit. Again, this is not saying what nonprofit should get it. It's not saying how much should go to each nonprofit, but there are a number in our communities, in all of our communities, Saratoga Springs and throughout the county, that have done a yeoman's work over the course of this pandemic and in providing resources to our community, as well as we are, in fact, taking up the slack where the county does not need it. And I would like that to be set aside because we do have a nonprofit process that for the past several years, at least to my knowledge, money has not been awarded through it. And so that's why I am requesting to set aside. Deputy Administrator, do you have the?
I do. The line number for unclassified revenues is A90-2770.
Thank you.
Supervisor Gaston, you just referenced that supervisor has not had to, in the past, say where the money's coming from, and I'd like council to speak to that.
Just as a point of order, this is a motion to amend the tentative, which would be under Resolution 313. I wanted to clarify your motion to amend. We were currently discussing the adoption resolution as opposed to the amending of the tentative. It's slightly technical difference, but I inferred your amendment to be amending Resolution 313. I just wanted to clarify that for purposes of the record.
Are we not on 310?
We were on the discussion of 310, which was the adoption, the motion adopting the budget, not amending the tentative. They're two separate resolutions.
Okay.
Supervisor Beach.
Mr. Chair, I guess I'd say just a couple of things here. First, I just wanted to, in reference to the motion to amend, I agree with Supervisor Lawler on this. I think that, we should probably see where this kind of plays out next year. And, we could always make an amendment to the budget throughout the year to fill the gap. And we've done that in a lot of different places here at the county. One thing that I can think of is the Trails Grant Program. Every year we budget a certain amount, we get the requests come in, it's more than what we budgeted, we wind up doing an amendment during the year. So, from my perspective, I know that we're doing this not-for-profit grant program next year. I am still taking, when people come to me and ask if they want, what we're doing, I encourage them to apply for the grant program, send them in. So even though I think we said they were due on October 1st. I'm still having them come in now because I know next year there's going to be a discussion and this program is going to go forward. So but like Supervisor Lawler said, it's hard to tell exactly what our amount's going to be. So I won't support the amendment for the 3 million, but I think during next year we need to look at it because this is going to come through. As far as the budget amendments overall, in the past, we never really tried to as chair of government review, we never really tried to follow the process. We've always just kind of done it in our meeting. And then afterwards, the administration took care of what we voted on. So I appreciate the fact that we're trying to do this per the book here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Shop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just like to add in my 2 cents on this. I don't disagree with anything that Supervisor Gaston is saying. I think there are a lot of nonprofits that are hurting. I don't disagree in theory with allocating more funds to it. But I also agree with Jack and Matt. When we did our IDA grant program for small businesses during COVID in Clifton Park and also in the county, we allocated certain amounts of our fund balance towards that. I thought we'd be flooded with applications. I didn't think we'd have enough money, we'd run out. So we budgeted a substantial but a reasonable amount towards that program. I was honestly kind of surprised as we moved through the year how few applications we got in relation to the funds that we had reserved for it. We ended up then in the middle of the year doing a redo of that, releasing more funds, making it available. And we came out at the end of the year about neutral in our budget in terms of grants awarded versus funds we had made available. But we did it in that 2-step process. And I think that was really good because it allowed us to keep our fund balance neutral. It allowed us to accrue revenue through the year, look at where we were, reanalyze, and then allocate more funds if it was needed. So I think 2 million is a nice seed amount. I'm not opposed at having a discussion later in the year about allocating more funding to that. The county certainly has the resources available, but I think let's see where it goes. Maybe, even hopefully a lot of nonprofits won't need to apply for those grant funds, if their finances are doing well at that point in the year. So I would say we hold the course now and move forward. In addition, I'd also just like to jump in. I didn't say much in the last go around, but in the past, here at the county in terms of the budget and when the numbers are available, I never saw any numbers. I never saw any numbers till I was here to vote on it. That's the way it's always been. This year, we engaged everyone in this process, department heads, administration. I thought it was a wonderful process. We did a great job. I don't want to talk about the past. I want to move the county forward. I think that's what this budget does. We're doing huge things that have not been done in decades in the state. We're turning into a full service health department. It's a massive commitment of time, manpower, and most importantly, money. A lot of those positions have been allocated towards that department. We've got body camera mandates. We've got public safety mandates to deal with. Our IT, our infrastructure, our equipment here is seriously lagging. It's terrible in some respects. A lot of these things just have to get fixed. They have to get fixed now for both our employees and the community. And that's what this budget does. And I'm sorry, I don't have my numbers with me, but Administrator or Ridge, could one of you just address the impact on the average property tax bill that we're going to see coming out of this budget? Do we have that in average per 100,000 of assessed value or the average $250,000 assessed home? Anybody have that available?
Yeah, Supervisor asked for the rate. It's $2.
What would that translate into, a tax increase or decrease on the average assessed value of average residential home in Saratoga County? Say $250,000 assessment. Did you have that calculation in front? Because I think it's going down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Supervisor, that would be a slight decrease. I don't have that number of 250, but it is a slight decrease. And we believe that we will remain as, with that decrease, with the lowest property tax rate in the state.
So I think we're achieving a lot under this budget as it is. We're assisting nonprofits. We're doing all the things I mentioned, everything in the budget for all our departments. All the departments who requested something got something that they desperately wanted. And I think it's a great thing. That's all I have to say about it, and I fully support it.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Barrett.
Just real quick, I would encourage my colleagues to maybe look at creating a program for nonprofits in their own town using the ARP money. This is a one-time, or if we add to it, a two-time, but basically a one-time opportunity to use federal funds to support our nonprofits. I began a program for the nonprofits back in July, starting to put that together in Clifton Park. So I think you're right, Supervisor Gaston. We know our communities and the needs. So I think if every community also had their own program, it would make all of our money that's being allocated through the ARP program go that much further.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Gaston.
Well, on that note, hearing so much support for continuing and perhaps expanding the funding, I'm happy to withdraw my motion for an amendment. However, in all of the previous meetings, it had been determined that the $2 million was, or it had been stated that the $2 million was a one-time and that was it. So if there are supervisors who are interested in potentially adding to that later, I'm happy to withdraw it as long as that's the intention and support of that. I just think that there should be more than that added to it, and that there's definitely those needs out there. So I'm happy to withdraw that then. I'm getting terrified looks from the Director of Finance and Deputy Administrator. I don't know if that's from me or just in general. Okay. It's like, I hope I didn't mess up a Post-it note. But I'm happy to withdraw it based on that. But my idea is that I think that there needs to be more than $2 million support. And if what I'm hearing here in this room is that that potential is there, because I know the need is there, I have no problem with that. Although Supervisor Schaaf did bring up, he said that body cameras were mandated. I'm not aware of that. I'm not sure if that's just a term of art there, but if I can get that information, and then also about the personnel. Thank you.
The motion is withdrawn on request of Supervisor Gaston, Supervisor Peck on Resolution 310.
Yeah, can I just for my own knowledge, no point here, but to her point, the ARPA funding was 5 million in unexpended revenue to fill 2022. That left you with 17 million. When I looked at the budget, it looks like that 17 million is budgeted for certain eligible projects, ARPA projects. So I just want to clarify, when she's asking to move some of that money over, you need to take it away from somewhere if you did that. Am I wrong, Ridge? Isn't that 17 million attributed to the unallocated amount attributed to certain eligible projects, whether it be the water line for the sewer, I think, or something else? It's all mapped out. I just want to make sure I'm reading the right thing.
Yeah, so all of the ARPA eligible expenses in the budget are offset by associated ARPA revenue that's filed under the unclassified revenue line.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Lawler.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions here. First, to follow up. So all of the ARPA money that's recorded as revenue for the 2022 budget has been allocated for expenses in the 2022 budget. Is that correct? I'm not I thought, can you add some context to that, please?
Yeah, right now, so we received 22 million this year. We expect to receive another 22 million next year. Working with our accountants, they identified, and we had this verified, that $27 million of the ARPA money can be classified under the lost revenue category, which gives us a lot more freedom on how to use that 27 million versus the current restrictions of the ARPA. So right now, in the budget itself, for the 22 million we have received this year, I think it's 12.2 million is of ARPA funds, a combination of the lost revenue funds and direct ARPA applications that qualify under the current ARPA rules, which we think are going to change, by the way. 12.2 of that 22 should be, is in the budget this year. The remainder will drop down to fund balance at the end of the year unless the board decides to, reallocate it. So for the 2022 budget, we haven't really even looked at next year's $22 million. So that will be another source of funds that we will have to deal with in the 2023 budget.
Supervisor, could you put your mic on? Thank you.
We haven't accrued for the 2023 ARPA money. There's no accrual for that, is there?
No, I don't believe so.
I mean, because that would be a huge difference. If you accrued it, it would all fall to fund balance now or be spent somewhere in this in this budget. So I'm assuming that the 2023 ARPA money is not-
2022.
excuse me, the 2022 ARPA money is, we haven't, it's not in here,
Correct.
right? Okay, I wanted to get that clear. And then a couple of other quick questions. Is it, without trying to do the math line by line, just a general question, is it reasonable for me to assume that the new positions that are offered, right? I think it's kind of like the same situation as the equipment at the DPW. I mean, we're not known for going on wild, crazy hiring sprees in Saratoga County. I got a lot of confidence in the department heads. I mean, we say, every time that we have an opportunity, we praise our department heads for their ability and their service. But I just want to know, is any of the one-shot money being used to offset hiring this year?
No,
Okay,
And-
that's a big part of it.
it is, and I'm glad you brought it up, Supervisor.
I don't think this is repeat.
So we, through the budget process, through our budget liaison team, working with the departments, we ended up cutting $8 million out of the department head requests that they submitted. A lot of those were positions. They asked for reasonably, because there's a lot of work to do. We're the fastest growing county in the state. There's a lot of services we have to deliver. So we had to make the determinations to recommend to Law and Finance and the board, which positions really were justified and needed that we could afford this year. So there was a lot of positions we turned down.
That answers my questions. Thank you both.
Any supervisors on the line wish to comment on Resolution 310?
Chairman,
Supervisor Gaston.
am I going to get an answer regarding the positions?
What's that?
The
Which
statement
question?
was made that some of the positions that are being added, some of the 45 are mandated. Which ones?
I think it's approximately 10 of the positions at the sheriff's, jail, and district attorney are in response to the Executive 203 order, and also another mandate. I'm not sure exactly what it is regarding the jails, where we have to start providing additional services for inmates. And in addition, the discovery laws that were recently implemented, the district attorney needs more staff to help with the discovery laws, especially with all of the body camera footage that is going to have to be reviewed now as that program is implemented. So those are really the ones that were mandated, so to speak, that we fill in order to achieve the board's implementation of the 203 plan.
Okay, so none of the positions and the body camera program themselves have not been mandated. We are choosing to add personnel in order to meet requirements in various areas, but there aren't any positions that were mandated. Is that? I'm not trying to. I want to know what we're actually being forced to do as a county, and
Well-
is it a programmatic thing or is it a personnel thing?
Well, in order to comply with mandates, and the board voted to implement the body cameras, and also some of them are mandates with the jail and the district attorney. They have to comply with those mandates. In order to effectively implement those mandates and the body camera program, we have to make these hires. So I guess it's a matter of semantics, whether it's actually mandated by the state, but it's certainly mandated by this board's actions that if we are going to effectively accomplish what it is the board has voted on, we have to hire these people.
So again,
To-
I have no problem with the hiring of the personnel or the problems, but there is a distinction to me between New York State requiring us to maintain or create certain positions and what we choose to do to meet their programmatic mandates. I don't have a problem with it either way. That was my question, because there's an unfunded mandate issue here anyhow, but that is distinct to me and is a separate argument larger than this board if they are also requiring certain personnel positions. That's all I was asking, is because when that language was used, that's how I understood it to be. You've answered the question. That's fine. Like, again, we need to meet the mandates. That's totally fine. I have no problem with it. That was just where my question is.
Isn't that, I think it's a little bit of semantics because the 203 committee, that was the leading recommendation. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And if we accept those recommendations forward, there's certain positions that had to be created to make it happen. I mean, you couldn't add the body cameras and not add the positions. It would be impossible to do. And I think that's where maybe getting lost in the translation here a little bit.
And,
Portion of the positions are consequences.
I would just add that rarely does Albany mandate a specific position, but it's very common to have them mandate a process. And if you look at, for instance, transitioning to a full-service public health department, it doesn't mandate that we hire a single person, but we have to perform the service, and you can't do it if the people aren't there. So maybe it is semantics, but we have obligations that we have to meet as a county. Any other comments on Resolution 310? If not, at this time, I'd entertain a motion to adopt Resolutions 310, 311, 313 through 319. Would someone like to move that?
So moved.
Supervisor Grasslow. Seconded by Supervisor Tolson.
I thought there was a request for a separate vote on Resolution 310.
Yeah, point of order.
Would someone like to move, withdraw the motion to Supervisor Grasslow, you willing to withdraw your motion?
Sure thing.
All right, so at this time, I'll look for a resolution to move. You have to do them in sequence. You do them together. Okay, so at this time, I'll take up a motion to move Resolution 313. Made by Supervisor Shop. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Supervisor Connolly. Roll call.
Supervisor Barrett,
Yes.
Connolly,
Yes.
Gaston, Grasso,
Yes.
Kuzniers,
Yes.
Lant,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Lucia,
Yes.
O'Connor,
Yes.
Heck,
No.
Pemrick,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Allison, Beach,
Yes.
Winnie,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Wright,
No.
Blotnick. Motion passes.
And at this time, I entertain a motion to move Resolution 310. Moved by Supervisor Tolson, seconded by Supervisor Barrett. Roll call.
Supervisor Barrett,
Yes.
Connolly,
Yes.
Gaston,
Yes.
Grasso,
Yes.
Kuzniers,
Yes.
Land,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Lucia,
Yes.
O'Connor,
Yes.
Heck,
No.
Pemrick,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Shaw, Smith,
Yes.
Allison, Beach,
Yes.
Winnie,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Wright,
No.
Slotnick.
No.
Motion passes.
And at this time, entertain a motion to move resolutions 311, 312, 313, 314. I'm sorry, strike 313, 314, 315, 316, 317, 318, and 319.
So moved.
Striking 312. Someone like to move that?
So moved.
Moved by Supervisor Tolleson, and I believe Supervisor Lucia seconded the motion. Roll call vote.
Supervisor Barrett, Connolly,
Yes.
Gaston, Grasso,
Yes.
Kuzniers,
Yes.
Lant,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Lucia,
Yes.
O'Connor,
Yes.
Peck,
Yes.
Pemrick.
Yes.
Supervisor Pemrick?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Shaw, Smith,
Yes.
Collison, Beach,
Yes.
Winnie,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Slotnick.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn? Supervisor Shop, second
Second
by
that.
Supervisor Wright. Roll call.
Supervisor Barrett, Connolly,
Yes.
Gaston, Grasso,
Yes.
Kuzniers,
Yes.
Lant,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Lucia,
Yes.
O'Connor,
Yes.
Peck,
Yes.
Pemrick,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Shaw, Smith,
Yes.
Collison, Beach,
Yes.
Winnie,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Wright, Slotnick.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.